So I was at dinner last night and my friend, let's call him Alex, ordered a salad. Not weird, except Alex used to be a person who would order 2 entries, because the portions are so small here. When I asked if he was feeling okay, he just smiled and said, "Oh, I'm just not that hungry anymore." And that's when I realized we are living through the first pharmaceutical revolution that's making people voluntarily less interested in one of life's greatest pleasures. That's either incredibly sad or incredibly brilliant, and honestly, I can't tell which. Ozempic was never supposed to be a weight loss drug. It's like if you invented a cure for hiccups and accidentally solved world hunger. Scientists were just trying to help diabetics regulate their blood sugar. And whoops, suddenly people were dropping dress sizes like they were hot potatoes, which, ironically, they were no longer interested in eating. The drug mimics the hormone GLP-1, which is basically your stomach's way of texting your brain, "Hey, we're good down here, maybe stop sending food." Most of us have been ignoring that text for years. Ozempic just makes it impossible to put on Do Not Disturb. But here's where it gets philosophically weird. If you can chemically eliminate desire itself, what does that say about the nature of want versus need? Descartes famously said, "I think therefore I am." With Ozempic, it's more like, "I don't want the donut, therefore I am confused about who I am." Before Ozempic, weight loss was our culture's favorite form of suffering theater. We loved watching people document their journey from 150 kilos to marathon runner, because it proved that transformation was possible if you just wanted it badly enough, and were willing to meal prep sad chicken breasts for eternity. These videos were basically secular conversion stories. I was lost, I found discipline, and now I have abs and inner peace. We watched them the same way people used to read about saints. Impossible standards that made us feel both inspired and terrible about ourselves. The implicit promise was, if you suffer enough, document it thoroughly enough, and develop an unhealthy relationship with the food scale, you too can become someone worth celebrating. It was the Protestant work ethic applied to a pancreas. And then Ozempic shows up like, what if we just didn't want the food? Suddenly, all that beautiful suffering becomes optional. It's like if someone invented a machine that gives you enlightenment without meditation. Technically impressive, spiritually confusing. What happened next was predictably insane. Suddenly, everyone discovered they had insulin resistance. WebMD searches for diabetes symptoms went through the roof. People were doctor shopping harder than someone trying to get their ADHD medication in college. Meanwhile, actual diabetics couldn't get their medication because suddenly, half of Hollywood was very concerned about their glucose levels. Kim Kardashian denied using it, which was basically a confirmation. Elon Musk tweeted about it because apparently his personal brand is a guy who has opinions about everything, including injectable appetite suppressants. The waiting list got so long that people were treating Ozempic like concert tickets to see Taylor Swift. Except, instead of singing along to Anti-Hero, you're just injecting weekly yourself, pretending that you're just eating more mindfully now. Let's think about this systematically, because René Descartes loved a good decision matrix. The Cartesian square has 4 quadrants. What will happen if you take Ozempic? What won't happen if you take it? What will happen if you don't take it? And what won't happen if you don't take it? So let's start with what will happen if you take Ozempic. You'll lose weight, spend a fortune, inject yourself weekly, and possibly feel nauseous. You'll join the ranks of people who just aren't that hungry anymore and develop strong opinions about appetite regulation. What won't happen if you take Ozempic? You won't struggle with willpower, won't feel guilty about eating, won't have to meal prep sad chicken breasts, and won't have to pretend that kale tastes good. What will happen if you don't take Ozempic? You'll keep struggling with traditional weight loss methods, maintain your complex relationship with food, and possibly stay the same weight while spending less money and avoiding medical side effects. What won't happen if you don't take it? You won't experience pharmaceutical appetite suppression, won't risk taking medication from diabetics, won't become dependent on weekly injections, and won't have to explain to people why you're suddenly not interested in pizza. It's probably the first time in history that 17th century's philosopher's decision-making method was applied to weekly injections that make you hate pizza. Aristotle believed that virtue comes from practice. You become brave by doing brave things, generous by being generous, and disciplined by exercising discipline. From this perspective, learning to say no to cake isn't just about weight loss. It's about becoming the kind of person who can do difficult things when it matters. Traditional weight loss is basically CrossFit for your willpower. Every time you choose the salad over the burger, you're building moral muscle. Every 5 a.m. workout is character training disguised as cardio. Ozempic shortcuts this entire process. You skip the virtue building struggle and go straight to the results. It's like using cheat codes in a video game. You get the achievement, but did you really earn the satisfaction? But here's the counter-argument. If Ozempic helps someone become healthier and happier, maybe that's virtuous too. Maybe the virtue isn't in struggle itself, but in making wise choices about your well-being. After all, we don't judge people for using antidepressants instead of just thinking positive thoughts until their brain chemistry fixes itself. It's not 1980s anymore, where people were told to just snap out of depression. This brings us to the authenticity problem. When someone loses 50 kilograms through diet and exercise, we celebrate their willpower. When they lose 50 kilograms through Ozempic, we question their character. But think about how arbitrary this is. Some people are born with the metabolism of hyperactive teenager. Others look at carbohydrates and gain weight. And some people's relationship with food was literally programmed before they were born. During the Dutch hunger winter of 1944-1945, German forces blocked food supplies to the Netherlands. Women who were pregnant during the famine gave birth to children who, decades later, had significantly higher rates of obesity and diabetes. Their fetuses had adapted to scarcity. Their bodies learned to hoard every calorie, expecting a world where food was rare. These children didn't choose their metabolisms any more than someone chooses their eye color. Their bodies were programmed by historical trauma, literally written in their DNA by their grandparents' suffering. Some people naturally have low appetites. Others think about food every 30 seconds because their biology is screaming, remember the famine. Biology isn't fair, it's just biology shaped by history. We've created this weird moral hierarchy where natural advantages don't count as cheating, but pharmaceutical ones do. Using Ozempic is somehow less authentic than being born with genes that make weight management effortless. It's like judging someone for wearing glasses instead of squinting really hard. We don't consider corrective lenses as moral failing, but corrective appetite regulation? That's apparently character weakness with the prescription. John Stuart Mill would want us to think about the greatest good for the greatest number. So let's math this out. If Ozempic helps millions of people lose weight, we potentially reduce obesity-related healthcare costs, increase quality of life, reduce social stigma, and maybe stop having to pretend that dead body is attractive when it's actually concerning. On the other hand, we are creating a two-tiered system where wealthy people can buy thinness and poor people get diet advice and judgment. We are creating shortages for diabetics, and we are medicalizing what might be social problems, like food deserts, work cultures that prevent exercise, and stress levels that make emotional eating seem rational. Plus, what happens when everyone stops wanting food? Do restaurants close? Does the food industry collapse? Do we accidentally solve climate change by eliminating agriculture? These are the questions that keep philosophers awake at night, assuming they can still afford their sleep medication. Maybe the real question isn't whether Ozempic is ethical, but why we've created such a society where people feel so terrible about their bodies that they're willing to inject themselves weekly in order to change them. We've built an environment where food is engineered to be addictive, portion sizes are determined by marketing departments, and being thin is treated as a moral virtue. And then we act surprised when people want a pharmaceutical solution to a pharmaceutical problem. It's like creating a world where everyone has to run on treadmills and then judging them for wanting escalators. Maybe the issue isn't the escalator, it's the treadmill world. Here's what I think. Ozempic isn't just a medication. It's a mirror reflecting all our weird beliefs about effort, virtue, and what we owe our bodies. If using it makes you healthier and happier without harming others, it's probably fine. If you're taking it from diabetics who need it, or using it to avoid dealing with underlying issues, that's more complicated. But mostly, I think Ozempic reveals how much we've overcomplicated something that should be simple. Taking care of ourselves. Maybe instead of having a philosophical crisis about appetite suppressants, we could build a world where people don't need them in the first place. Or maybe sometimes a diabetes medication that makes you less hungry is a diabetes medication that makes you less hungry. And we can save the existential dread for truly important questions, like whether artificial intelligence deserves rights, or whether aliens are avoiding us because we are boring or because we are terrifying. The truth is, Ozempic forces us to confront something we would rather not think about. How much of what we call personal responsibility is actually just a biological lottery. Maybe that's why it makes us so uncomfortable. It's easier to believe that thin people are virtuous and fat people are lazy than to admit that some bodies are playing by different rules. So use it, don't use it. Just remember that either choice says more about our society than it does about your character. And if you see someone who's suddenly just not that hungry anymore, maybe don't assume you know their story. Their relationship with food might be more complicated than you think. Thanks for watching.